Before we get into Elaine Porter's story, stay with this one if you have ever watched somebody confuse loyalty with weakness. And if these stories help you notice the red flags a little sooner, consider subscribing. Elaine did not learn her marriage was ending because Richard sat her down and told her the truth. That would have been painful. But at least it would have been honest. She found out because her 15-year-old son needed to print a history assignment. The old family computer sat in the corner of the small office, slow, dusty, and stubborn. It was the kind of machine everybody ignored until a printer refused to connect to anything else. Noah was clicking through the shared folder, looking for his school paper, when he called out from the office. "Mom, why does Dad have a file about custody?" Elaine almost answered without thinking. She almost told him not to open his father's work documents. Then she stepped closer and saw the title. Stability, Narrative, Custody, and Support Strategy. For a second, the words did not fully register. They just sat there on the screen, neat and harmless looking, like every other file name in that folder. But then Elaine saw her own name in the preview pane. That was when the room seemed to get smaller. She told Noah to go upstairs and finish getting ready for bed. Her voice stayed calm. A little too calm, maybe. The kind of calm a mother uses when she does not want her child to know the floor has just cracked underneath her. Once he was gone, Elaine sat down at the desk and opened the PDF. At first, she tried to make it make sense. Richard worked in sales. He had reports, strategy documents, client files. Maybe he had mislabeled something. Maybe this had nothing to do with them. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation waiting on page 2. There was not. Page 2 had Noah's school schedule. Page 3 had estimated child support numbers. Page 4 described Elaine as emotionally reactive, difficult under pressure, and likely to become unstable once divorce was mentioned. Elaine stared at those words for a long time. Not because they were true, because they were prepared. That was the thing that made her hands go cold. This was not a husband thinking out loud after a bad argument. This was not a private note written in anger and forgotten. This was a plan. Clean, organized, and careful. The file was not only about Richard leaving her. It was about making sure she looked broken when he did. Elaine Porter was 52 years old when she realized how easily a man could take 24 years of marriage and rearrange it into a story where he was the victim. And Elaine was not perfect. That matters. She was not some saint floating through the house with a soft voice and endless patience. She got tired. She worried. She checked the family calendar too often. She reminded people about appointments they already remembered. Some nights, when the bills were stacked on the counter and Noah had homework spread all over the kitchen table, her tone came out sharper than she meant it to. She had flaws, but she was steady. That was the word people used when they needed something handled. Richard used to say it with pride. Back when they were younger, before the nice house, before the better cars, before he learned how to talk about success like he had built it alone. They started in a one-bedroom apartment with thin walls, second-hand furniture, 2 old cars, and student loan statements that seemed to arrive no matter how carefully Elaine budgeted. Richard worked sales then. He chased commissions, came home late, and talked about the future over cheap takeout at a folding table. Elaine worked part-time bookkeeping jobs. Then, after Noah was born, she slowly took on more of the house, more of the schedules, more of the invisible labor that does not look like work until nobody is doing it. And for years, she kept their life standing. She remembered Richard's client dinners before he did. She pressed his shirts before regional meetings. She handled tax folders, insurance renewals, mortgage paperwork, school forms, medical forms, and all the small grown-up responsibilities that never got applause. She kept their credit score clean. She kept the pantry stocked. She remembered birthdays, scheduled dentist appointments, mailed payments, checked statements, and made sure late fees did not sneak onto the kitchen counter. When Richard's mother had a mild stroke, it was Elaine who drove her to physical therapy twice a week. Richard called when he could. Elaine showed up because someone had to. When Richard lost his job at 43, he did not turn into some brave, inspiring man overnight. He got quiet, then embarrassed, then angry in little ways he never really owned. Elaine was the one who cut the grocery budget. She delayed repairs. She sold 2 pieces of jewelry she had owned since her 20s. She stretched money until it almost looked like there had been enough all along. She kept the mortgage current until Richard found work again, and she never used that against him. Maybe she should have. Not cruelly. Not every day. But maybe she should have reminded him that survival had not been his solo performance. Maybe she should have said out loud that there were years when his dignity was being held together by her silence. But Elaine was not built that way. She thought love meant you did not keep a scorecard. Richard, eventually, learned to take advantage of that. Somewhere along the way, he started telling the story differently. At first, it came out as jokes. Small things. Casual things. The kind of remarks people laugh at because calling them cruel would make the table uncomfortable. He would tell friends he carried the family. He would say Elaine was lucky she did not have to compete out in the real world anymore. He would say it with a little smile, as if the smile cleaned the insult off the sentence. Then, after a while, the smile disappeared. He started saying she did not understand pressure. He said she had gotten comfortable. He said she had no idea what it felt like to have everyone counting on you. Elaine would sit across from him at dinner and wonder when she had stopped being counted. The first real crack came on an ordinary night. That was the part that stayed with her later. Nothing dramatic happened first. No screaming, no broken glass, no woman's name flashing across his phone. Just dinner, dishes, homework, and the tired rhythm of a family that had done the same evening too many times to notice it anymore. Noah was sitting at the kitchen island with a math worksheet, stuck on fractions, and wearing that frustrated look only a 15-year-old can wear. Elaine had cooked dinner, cleaned most of it up, and taken 2 aspirin for the headache that had been building behind her eyes since early afternoon. Richard was in the living room, sitting back in his chair, scrolling through his phone while a game played on television. He was not really watching it. He just liked having noise around him while he disappeared into the screen. Elaine called from the kitchen and asked if he could help Noah for 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. Richard did not look up. He did not sigh first. He did not ask what the problem was. He did not even pretend to consider it. He just said, "You should be grateful I stayed this long." The house went quiet in a way Elaine never forgot. Noah lowered his eyes back to the worksheet. Elaine stood by the sink with a wet plate in her hand, water dripping off the edge into the basin, and something inside her went still. It was not the volume of the sentence that hurt. Richard did not yell. He did not throw anything. He did not say it in some heated moment that could be explained away later as stress or exhaustion. He said it flat, almost bored, like it was not an insult, like it was a fact he had been kind enough to finally share. Elaine rinsed the plate. She set it in the drying rack. Then she told Noah she would help him herself. Richard kept scrolling. And that was when Elaine understood something she had been trying very hard not to see. Her husband was not simply distant. He was not just tired. He was practicing a life where she had already been removed from the picture. The cruel part was, he still expected her to keep the lights on while he practiced. 6 months after the divorce was final, Elaine Porter was not living some perfect, polished new life, but it was hers. That mattered more than anything. She had moved into a townhouse on the quieter side of town. It was smaller than the house she had spent years maintaining. There was no wide kitchen for Richard to brag about when friends came over. No formal dining room they only used on holidays. No big backyard with a fence she had once picked out herself. But Noah had his own room. The bills were paid on time. The custody calendar was pinned to the refrigerator where everyone could see it. And nobody walked through the front door, making Elaine feel like she had to shrink just to keep the peace. For the first few weeks, the quiet felt strange, almost suspicious. Elaine would wake up early, expecting to hear Richard moving around downstairs, sighing loudly enough to make sure she knew he was irritated about something. She would stand in the kitchen with her coffee and wait for that old feeling. The one that told her to check his mood before starting her own day. But it never came. There was only the hum of the refrigerator, Noah's backpack by the door, and the soft morning light coming through the blinds. Peace does not always arrive like joy. Sometimes it arrives like the absence of dread. Elaine went back to bookkeeping almost full-time. At first, she took whatever work she could get. Small accounts, local businesses, a repair shop that needed payroll cleaned up, a bakery whose owner had not balanced statements in months, a retired couple who needed help organizing rental income. One client became 3, 3 became 6. By the end of the year, Elaine was doing better than she had done in a long time. Not rich, not glamorous, not the kind of ridiculous comeback where one woman loses a husband and somehow becomes a millionaire by Christmas. Real rebuilding is quieter than that. It looks like paying your own electric bill and not flinching. It looks like buying groceries without wondering what money has disappeared. It looks like sleeping through the night. It looks like laughing at breakfast because nobody is sitting across from you treating your presence like a punishment. Elaine became steady again. Only this time, she was steady for herself. And that was around the time she met Daniel. He was not flashy. He did not walk into her life like some grand reward for surviving Richard. Elaine would have run from that kind of man anyway. She had no interest in being swept off her feet. She had spent too many years being knocked off balance. Daniel was a widower. He owned a small repair business and had hands that looked like they had done honest work for a long time. He spoke gently, but not weakly. He had the kind of calm voice that did not demand anything from a room. They met because he needed help cleaning up his business books. At first, Elaine kept it professional. She wore her reading glasses, brought her laptop, and asked direct questions about receipts, invoices, mileage, and payroll. Daniel answered every question without making jokes about women and numbers, without acting embarrassed, without pretending he had everything handled when he clearly did not. That alone made him different. After their third meeting, he asked if she would like coffee sometime, when she was not being paid to organize his life. Elaine almost said no, not because she disliked him, because peace was still new, and she was protective of it. But Daniel did not push. He smiled and said, "No pressure. I just like talking to you. That was all. No guilt. No wounded pride. No punishment for hesitation." So a week later, Elaine said yes. Daniel did not try to replace anything. He did not act like he could erase what Richard had done. He never called her cautious like it was an insult. He never treated her boundaries like a challenge. When she talked about Noah, he listened. When she talked about work, he asked real questions. When she said she needed time, he believed her the first time. That kind of respect can feel almost unfamiliar after years of being trained to defend every need. Noah liked him slowly, which Elaine appreciated. Daniel never tried too hard. He did not arrive with gifts and fake enthusiasm. He just showed up when invited, spoke to Noah like he was a person, and once spent an entire Saturday helping him fix a loose chain on his bike without turning it into a performance. Elaine noticed that. So did Richard. By then, Richard's life had become the very thing he thought he was escaping. Vanessa was gone. And not gently. For a while, Richard had tried to keep playing the provider. He kept the apartment going. He covered deposits, furniture, medical bills, little emergencies that always seemed to appear right after he told her money was tight. He opened cards he should not have opened. He moved cash through that little LLC until there was not enough distance left between his lies and his bank statements. Vanessa had called it building their future. Richard had believed her, because he needed to. That was always the sad part about people who cheat for validation. They think they are being chosen. Sometimes they are only being used by someone who knows exactly what they want to hear. When the money slowed down, Vanessa changed. The sweet messages got shorter. The emergencies got bigger. The affection started arriving only after payments cleared. By the time Richard understood that he had been useful more than loved, she had already moved herself into another man's life, leaving behind unpaid bills, maxed out cards, furniture he did not want, and the kind of humiliation he could not charm his way out of. Richard was angry, of course. Men like Richard usually are when the mirror finally turns around. He told people Vanessa had manipulated him. He said she had taken advantage of a vulnerable time. He said the divorce had made him confused. He said he had been lonely. Maybe some of that was true, but Elaine knew the part he left out. He had not been dragged out of his marriage. He had packed his own bags, one lie at a time. His job changed too. It did not fall apart in some loud public scandal. That would have been too neat. Real consequences are often quieter and more embarrassing. His company looked into the LLC, the side income, and the time he had spent using work resources for personal business. He did not go to jail. He did not become some ruined man overnight. but he lost the regional position. He lost the respect of people whose approval used to matter to him. He lost income. He lost the house. And maybe worst of all for Richard, he lost the daily comfort of having Elaine quietly fix problems before anyone else noticed they existed. No one reminded him about deadlines now. No one caught billing mistakes. No one softened his tone in emails before he sent them. No one kept the pantry full, the calendar updated, the dentist appointments made, the tax folders organized, and the family image polished while he stood around calling it all nothing. He finally had his life without Elaine. It was not freedom. It was exposure. One evening, Richard came to Elaine's townhouse. He stood on the porch looking older than 54. Not just tired. Smaller. The confidence he used to wear like a jacket did not fit him anymore. Elaine opened the door, but she did not invite him in. That was new too. There had been a time when Richard could walk into any room Elaine occupied and assume there was a place for him there. A chair, a plate, a clean towel, a second chance. Not anymore. He looked past her into the warm light of the hallway and said Vanessa was gone. He said she had used him. He said he had made mistakes. He said work had been difficult. He said he missed Noah. He missed home. He missed the way things used to be before everyone got hurt. Elaine listened. She did not interrupt. She did not rescue him from the silence either. Then Richard looked over her shoulder. Inside, Daniel was helping Noah carry a box of books toward the hallway. Noah said something Elaine could not hear, and Daniel laughed softly, the kind of laugh that belonged in a peaceful house. Richard saw it, and his face changed. Not with rage, not even jealousy at first. It was understanding. Late, useless understanding. For the first time, he seemed to see what his absence had not destroyed. Elaine's life had not collapsed without him standing in the middle of it. Noah was not lost. The house was not cold. Elaine was not sitting alone, broken, and waiting for him to realize her worth. She had built something quieter and better. Richard swallowed and said, "Maybe I didn't realize how much you did for me." Elaine did not smile. She did not need to. She said, "You realized it. You just thought it didn't count because I loved you while doing it." That landed harder than anger would have. Richard looked down at the porch, then back at her. He asked if there was any chance they could talk. Maybe start slowly. Maybe try counseling. Maybe remember the good years before everything went wrong. That was how he said it. Before everything went wrong. As if betrayal were weather. As if hidden money, custody strategy, another woman, and a pregnancy timeline had simply happened to them. Elaine looked at the man who once told her she should be grateful he stayed. And she felt something she had not expected. Not hatred. Not longing. Not even the old ache. Just distance. Clean distance. She said, "No, Richard, you didn't stay. You waited in our home until you thought another life was ready for you. Now you can live in the one you chose." Richard opened his mouth, but there was nothing left that could change the shape of what he had done. Elaine closed the door gently. No slam. No final insult. No performance. Just the soft sound of a woman ending a conversation that had already cost her enough. Behind her, Noah was laughing at something Daniel said in the kitchen. Elaine stood there for a moment with her hand still on the door. She listened to the sound of her son being safe. She listened to the quiet she had earned. She listened to a home where nobody needed her broken to feel powerful. For the first time in years, she did not feel like someone's backup plan, not someone's maid, not someone's excuse, not someone's burden. She was a woman with her own money, her own home, her son's trust, and a man beside her who respected the peace she had fought so hard to rebuild. That was the part Richard never understood. Elaine had not won because she destroyed him. She had not won because Vanessa left him broke and embarrassed. She had not won because the court saw through the numbers, or because his job stopped protecting his image, or because the life he chose turned out to be smaller than the one he threw away. Those were consequences, not the victory. The victory was that Elaine stopped holding up his life while he called her the weight. Some people only recognize stability after they lose the right to live inside it. Richard had said Elaine should be grateful he stayed. In the end, she was grateful for something else entirely. She was grateful he finally left long enough for her to see she had been the foundation all along. If this story reminded you that calm can be a kind of strength, leave your thoughts below. And if you want more stories about betrayal, divorce, custody battles, evidence, karma, and the moment someone finally takes their power back, subscribe and stay with us.